Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Rating Room. Today we set sail on an adrenaline-fueled voyage with the iconic Tom Hanks in the gripping thriller Captain Phillips. This is Season 2, Episode 7.
The Rating Room. The Rating Room.
Captain Phillips tells the harrowing true story of Captain Richard Phillips, whose cargo ship, the MV Maersk Alabama, is hijacked by Somali pirates. As the tension escalates, Captain Phillips finds himself trapped in a life-and-death struggle with the volatile pirate leader, Mousse. So Jay, first question, same as always. Have you seen the film before? And if so, what did you remember about it?
Well, Andy, I think this is a first on the Rating Room podcast. And correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, because this is the first time that I've watched a film as part of the podcast that I've not seen before. And obviously, when we watch James Bond, we've watched them all. And I don't recall you not seeing any of the other Tom Hanks films. So I think this is a first. I did know, though, where you say, did I remember anything? Obviously, I didn't. But I do remember, because I used to, be quite big into films and used to read a lot of the film magazines when I was younger. But I did remember who directed the film, Paul Greengrass. Because I always think of Greengrass as the bloke from, what's the program done in the Peak
in
District,
Yorkshire,
I think it was. Yorkshire Dale.
Heartbeat.
Yeah, Yorkshire Dale. That's what, Heartbeat, that's it. That's where I think of Greengrass. And I also remembered it involved pirates. But otherwise, I've not really been tempted to watch this film. So what about you, Andy? Have you seen this one before, and what did you remember?
Well, before I answer that question, shout out to our listeners over the age of 75. Sure you're all Heartbeat fans in your own right. But yeah, I've seen the film once before, and I remembered basically nothing about it. The only thing I remember is the line, "I'm the captain now," which is kind of one of those things that's just played over and over again. But in terms of the actual film, the scenes, the story, other than, it's about Somali pirates hijacking a cargo ship, I didn't really remember anything, so it was kind of new to me as well.
So yeah, I think that this is the first time, then, Andy, I'll say that we're pretty much going in with a blank slate.
Certainly a cleanish one for me.
So obviously, we're covering Tom Hanks in Season 2, and Tom Hanks plays Captain Richard Phillips.
We've got Barkhad Abdi playing the part of Abdulwali Mousse.
We've got Michael Chernus playing Shane Murphy.
And one more cast member is Barkhad Abdi Rahman as Adnan Bilal, another one of the Somali pirates.
Our first segment is always the box office segment. So I'm just going to give some quick headlines before we talk about some more bits in the box office. So the budget was $55 million. The box office was just over $220 million. And the adjusted box office was $287.3 million. Now, the film did fail to reach the top spot in the US weekend box office charts, which was, I don't know if I was surprised about it, but when you think about Tom Hanks films, it's surprising that a Tom Hanks film didn't make it to number 1. But it did reach number 2, and it stayed there for a further week before slowly sliding down the charts over the next few months.
Yeah, and what kept it off the top spot was the Sandra Bullock space film Gravity. Gravity stayed top of the charts for 3 weeks in total. And Captain Phillips was actually ranked 32 in the top US box office charts for the year 2013, which incidentally is one place higher than Jackass Presents Bad Grandpa,
which is a classic Jackass film. Have you seen the Jackass films, Andy? I know it's a bit toilet humour, but I do like those films.
Did you say Jackass?
Jackass.
Do you mean Jackass?
It's because I'm a southerner. Yeah, it's because I'm posh, Andy. I put R's in like things like bath
and glass
and glass.
There's no R in there.
It is an effort to say jackass though for me, but I do really like that. I find those films quite funny. And Bad Grandpa, I always think of the scene when they're in some kind of cafe. Have you seen it before?
I have, yeah. It's brilliant.
Yeah, when they're in a cafe, and he's sat there with the little boy, and he's having some bowel problems, and then it just goes on. Proper toilet humour. But So Andy's mentioned Captain Phillips ranked 32, and the top 5 grossing films in the US in 2013 were The Hunger Games: Catching Fire, a film I've not seen, Iron Man 3, a film I have seen, Frozen, which I think is a very good film, Despicable Me 2, which is a pretty good film, and Man of Steel, which is a film I enjoyed. What about you, Andy? Have you seen many of them, if any?
I think I've seen 4 out of 5. So I've seen The Hunger Games: Catching Fire. That's one of the first 2, isn't it? I've seen 2 out of 4 Hunger Games films. I think the ones I've not seen are The Mockingjay Parts 1 and 2. Not seen Iron Man 3. I did enjoy Iron Man 1. But I kind of lost track with all the superhero type films because they were just making so many. Frozen, I've got strong views about Frozen. It's,
Why?
Well, it's supposed to be one of those films that everyone says is very empowering for women, isn't it? Because you've got strong female leads in Elsa and Bertha or whatever their names are. But one of the sisters, she meets a man for the very first time, falls in love with him, marries him. Like, she can't do it without men, and then she meets someone else, falls in love with him, marries him, whatever it is. It's like, this is not a good example to set young girls and women. There's nothing about independence. It's just relying on us menfolk. And us menfolk are not worth relying on. Sisters, you need to stand up for yourselves.
Very well said, Andy. I agree, but I did enjoy that film. That is a film that I can't remember how old my daughter was when it first came out, but it was a film that lots of people just used to talk about. So I hadn't watched it then, and my kids hadn't watched it, but it was just like always in the news or people just talking about it. So I did watch it quite late, but it's a film that's very good. And my daughter did have a Frozen party where both of the princesses came dressed up, Andy, and I was chatting to them during the party. So that was a good party. Yeah. Hopefully my wife isn't listening to this episode.
So that's another story for another podcast, I think, isn't it? But shall we let it go and carry on with this podcast? So the film Captain Phillips, not Frozen, Captain Phillips was nominated for 6 Academy Awards. These were Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Film Editing, Best Sound Editing, and Best Sound Mixing. But
Captain Phillips lost out to some big hitters in the above categories. This included losing to 12 Years a Slave in the Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay categories, Jared Leto in Dallas Buyers Club in the Best Supporting category. Best Actor Supporting category, sorry.
Yeah, and it also lost out to Gravity in the Best Film Editing and Best Sound Editing categories. But BAFTAs was a little bit more successful. Barkhad Abdi won the BAFTA for Best Actor in a Supporting Role. So it wasn't all nominations, it was some awards to be had as well. So we'll peel a layer off and we'll deep dive a little bit further. So as mentioned, this film was released in 2013. The director was Paul Greengrass, and the soundtrack composer was Henry Jackman.
So the film is based on a book by Richard Phillips and Stephen Doughty. A Captain's Duty, Somali Pirates, Navy SEALs and Dangerous Days at Sea. Quite a mouthful there for a book title. Paul Greengrass has directed 3 Jason Bourne films, and that's why I remember him. The Bourne Supremacy, The Bourne Ultimatum, and Jason Bourne, which I think is the one I've not seen. He would later go on and direct Tom Hanks again in News of the World, which I believe is on Netflix in the UK. And Greengrass films have received 15 Academy Award nominations, and 3 of these have all come for the Jason Bourne Ultimatum films in terms of the wins.
It's a pretty decent record for Mr. Greengrass. Moving on to Henry Jackman, he's composed music for a range of films, including X-Men First Class, Wreck-It Ralph, Big Hero 6, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and more recently the Chris Hemsworth films Extraction and Extraction 2. Now, as mentioned earlier, the film is based on the real-life hijacking of the Maersk, Alabama cargo ship. So let's spend a couple of minutes just talking about this situation, shall we?
Yeah, so Muse, the sole pirate survivor, so spoiler alert there, received a prison sentence of 33 years and 9 months after pleading guilty to hijacking, kidnapping and hostage taking. Now, some of the crew filed a lawsuit against the company for knowingly sending them to areas that were known to have pirates, and the lawsuit was eventually settled for an undisclosed sum.
Yeah, some lawsuits were filed by some of the crew members of the Maersk, Alabama, because they assert that the hero portrayed in the film does not accurately reflect Captain Phillips. According to these crew members, Phillips himself bears some responsibility as he prioritised speed and financial gain.
Andy, before we move on to the next part of the pod, now I was watching this film and the missus was in and out, and she was basically Googling this. So when it was near the end, she started saying, "Oh, do you know that they sued the makers of the film?" I said, "No, because I'm still watching the film." So she was just like Googling like how it ended and everything. And I was really surprised about that. So I don't know what your thought was, because I think, in the film, it's made very clear that Captain Phillips is aware of the danger. It's also spoken about in terms of how many miles, about, if they divert, how many miles in terms of where they are off the coast. So it seemed like everyone was in the picture before they went, you know what I mean? Before they were doing it, it wasn't out of the blue that, oh no, there's Somali pirates in this area. It seemed to be, they were aware of it, but obviously Captain Phillips probably getting pressured by the company to deliver, the cargo contents in a timely manner. I just wondered whether the crew were aware of that, or was it at the higher level?
Yeah, it's hard to know, isn't it? I guess we should probably say that we're not familiar with the lawsuit and the ins and outs of the workings of the company, so our opinions are our own. There's nothing factual here. We're just stating opinions, so calm down, any lawyers out there looking to gain money from us. I guess it depends on how accurate the portrayal of the film is, how much has been exaggerated for the big screen. But from how it's portrayed, it would suggest to me that it's not a total surprise. Probably more so from Philip's side, because obviously he's more clued in with, I think we talk about some emails that he's looking through later on. But also, it's not like geographically that it would be unexpected. Somali pirates are known to the area. They're a thing. People know about them. And if you're in that industry, it's not going to be a surprise. It's hard to say. I'm not going to take a side for obvious reasons. But I would be surprised if it was brand new news to anyone on the ship. But that's just our opinion. There's nothing factual about what we've said there.
Indeed. Nicely done, Andy.
Leave us alone. We've got no money.
We got no money. So let's talk about the film now. So the film opens on the 28th of March 2009, and we see Captain Phillips getting all his gear ready for his next job, and he's checking the routes, tickets, and packing his gear. And we cut to Somalia now, and the villagers are being forced to be pirates, and Musei picks his crew, and they're on the beach here.
Yeah, this scene reminded me of like picking football teams in the school playground, because there was a couple of crews being picked, weren't they? And it was kind of like, well, I'll have that guy, and you have that guy, and I'll have that guy. And it seemed casual, maybe the wrong word, but it wasn't formal in any way, was it?
It wasn't. And when I saw your note here, Andy, I thought in my head, is this the one time when you want to be picked last?
Could well be, yeah.
Because, yeah.
But I noticed as well that he picked the big guy. That could be like football. You want the big guy at the back, don't you? But anyway, as the film rolls on, we see Captain Phillips boarding the ship. It leaves the docks in Oman. And it seems like he's running a tight ship. He's not letting his crew slack in any way, is he? He's a bit of a taskmaster. And as the film rolls on, we see him catching up on emails, which we referred to earlier. And there's one about pirate attacks in the area, isn't there?
There is, and that prompts Captain Phillips to start getting the crew practicing some training drills as well. And then he notices 2 boats on the radar as well, which are approaching the ship.
Yeah, so at this point, Phillips tells Kenny, I believe it is, to contact the US emergency line. And there's no answer. Like, this is an emergency line. And there's no answer. That just kind of blew my mind. If that part of the film is accurate, shame on you. That's terrible. So they contact the UK emergency line as well. The UK will fight on America's behalf, as they or may not have in the past. That's going to upset some listeners, isn't it? We might have to cut that out. But yeah, they contact the UK line. They're not really much help either, are they?
No, but at least you could get through to the UK line. And we do have listeners in America, Andy, so let's not...
I'm just joshing. We know you helped us out back in the day. We're all friends now.
Indeed. And the pirates are fast approaching the cargo ship, and Captain Phillips, I thought this was really clever, because obviously we find out that he can't get any backup at the moment, and Captain Phillips pretends that he's having a radio conversation about backup arriving, because he's suspecting that the pirates are actually listening into the conversation. And it does work, because one of the pirate boats actually turns around. And Captain Phillips, again, this is very clever, obviously very experienced, and he's using the ship's waves to slow down the chasing pirate boat. And it works, because now the pirates the pirates have stopped. But they aren't giving up, though. This isn't the last time we see the pirates.
No, indeed not. They've fallen back, haven't they, just to regroup. We get to the evening, and Captain Phillips and the crew are having a bit of a debrief about the day's events. The crew clearly not happy. Some of them wanting to leave, and I think he even says, doesn't he, that you want to leave, sign the paperwork, and you can leave at the next dock, sort of thing. But Captain Phillips is not backing down. He's not going to change the ship's course. They've got a job to do. But they're clearly scared. They're clearly concerned. They know that this is not over. This is not just a one-off occurrence. The pirates will be back. But they also know that they're not equipped to fight back. Now, I don't know if it's mentioned at this point, but we find out throughout that they've not got weapons on board. So obviously that's going to be a massive cause for concern when coming up against armed pirates. And, as suspected, the pirates have regrouped. They're fixing their boats. And there's a bit of an argument between the two groups. And Musée knocks out the other boat captain. And then the next morning, we see that Musé's pirate boat has now got 2 engines. So they're closing fast on the cargo ship. So that's a nice... I don't know how much of that is true, or whether that's, again, something that's been added for Hollywood effects. But it's a nice, maybe the wrong word, but it's good interplay between the two pirate groups, isn't it?
It is, because there's friction, isn't there, before that as well. So Musée has definitely took the lead now. Now, the cargo ship has these big water hoses, and it seems to be keeping the pirates at bay. But the pirates notice that one of the hoses has slipped from its mount, and they make a move for that part of the ship. Now, First Officer Murphy does go down to refasten the water hose. However, the pirates actually shoot at him, and he has to retreat.
Yeah, things are looking a bit desperate at this point. Phillips even gets some flares, doesn't he? And he starts firing them at the pirate boat, but to no avail. I guess hoses and flares are no match for armed pirates, are they?
No match at all. And the pirates do manage to fasten a ladder to the cargo ship. It's got these big hooks. And quite a crude thing, but it obviously works. And they do board the ship. And Musée is they make their way up to the crew deck. What do you call the bit where they have like the control centre? What part of that bit is this?
Oh, that's a good question, isn't it? It's not the cockpit. That's aeroplanes.
This ain't gonna be another seaplane incident, is it?
Yeah. What's the ocean equivalent of a cockpit? It's one of them, isn't it? The driving room, where they drive the boat.
Feel free to cut any of that out, Andy. And so the pirates managed to make their way up, and the Musée is talking to Captain Phillips, and he asks where the ship is from and what is it carrying, and he demands money. So they're very happy when they find out the ship is an American ship.
Yeah, they do seem very happy at that news, but they're not so happy that they don't know where the other crew are, and the pirates threaten to kill them, and they want to know, he's asking Captain Phillips where are the other crew, and Phillips and the other guys with him are playing dumb, aren't they? They don't know. And maybe at this point they don't actually know. They know they're hidden, or should be hiding, I guess they don't know where at this point.
These next few scenes, the film is really tense because Captain Phillips, I think he's really clever, and I don't think he's been through this before, but he seems to be experienced because he's using like these delaying techniques, and he's very calm under pressure, isn't he? He's not panicking or anything. And the pirates are searching for the other crewmen, and there's this really tense scene, I think it's really well done, where Murphy is hiding in the cooler room, and Captain Phillips goes in there with one of the pirates, and he clocks him, doesn't he, in the corner.
Yeah, he does. It's some really smart thinking. I think he picks up, is it a tray of melons or something, and says, look, here's some fruit. We need to eat it before it goes bad or something, and kind of almost ushers him out, doesn't he, in by doing so. It's really clever. And then the same pirate stands on some broken glass. And later on, he's the one with bare feet, and the power to the ship is cut off. And I think there's... I may be muddling up the order here, but there's kind of secret radio messages being relayed on it to some of the crew members. So without telling them what to do, it's kind of implying that this is where we're going to be and this is what's happening. So hopefully they pick up on these cues and lay traps accordingly, and broken glass being one of them. And so they're still searching. Musset continues to search the engine room for the crew. But he's on his own at this point, and the crew managed to overpower him. And it's looking like it's all over, isn't it? They strike a deal. They say, we'll give you your captain back, you give us our captain back, is basically the crux of it.
It is, but the pirates do back out of the deal, and they force Captain Phillips into the lifeboat with them. Now, we do later see the cargo ship following the lifeboat, which I was really surprised about, because I thought the cargo ship would have stayed static and, I don't know, either go back or maybe carry on its journey, but they are being really good because they're continuing to follow the lifeboat. Now, Captain Phillips, he does try to help one of the pirates with the injured foot, the one that's obviously, as Andy mentioned, cut with the broken glass.
Yeah, I thought this was a little bit odd. Maybe it's my cynical ways, but, is he just that nice a guy, Captain Phillips, that he's wanting to help the bad guy? Because why would you help someone who's put you in this life-threatening situation?
I didn't know if he was trying to build up a rapport with, because that person that got injured, I would probably say he was the weakest out of the three, or the pirates, sorry, the four pirates altogether. So I think that if he was trying to get in that way to see if he dropped his guard, but yeah, maybe he's a nice guy, or he's just trying to build that rapport up. But the American destroyer is en route, and we also see the Navy SEALs team set off as well, so reinforcements are on their way.
They are indeed, and the Navy destroyer arrives as the pirates are arguing amongst themselves. The cargo ship leaves the scene at this point. Their work is done. I guess the crew at this point, they don't know if they're going to see Captain Phillips ever again, do they? They've got to just trust that the Navy know what they're doing. And the Navy destroyer approaches the lifeboat, and this I thought was quite an interesting plot point. I don't know how true it is or not, but it was an interesting plot point, and it plays into a couple of notes I took later on. But Captain Phillips basically uses code to let the Navy know that he's in seat 15 before an aircraft carrier arrives with another destroyer. And I thought that was quite interesting from a tactical perspective, because I thought that would obviously play into anything that the Navy may plan going forward. But it does feature in kind of in my notes later on, which we'll get to soon.
Yeah, he's very much thinking about what's happening, and again, he's keeping a level head. Now, Captain Phillips, he pleads to Musset to stop all of this, and we do see the Navy SEALs parachute down into the sea, which I found was really odd when they were parachuting down, because I was thinking to myself, why don't they just land on the destroyer? And then you see him actually land in the sea. And I'm thinking, I just thought that was weird that they landed directly in the sea. I know they had a little dinghy. I thought it was weird why they couldn't just kind of jump off the destroyer and then make their way. Meanwhile, Captain Phillips pushes one of the pirates into the sea, and he does try to swim to safety. However, the pirates recapture Captain Phillips, and they do give him a bit of a beating as well.
Yeah, now this is a bit of a strange move, maybe desperation, I guess, at this point, but it made such a big deal about being in seat 15. that could have been a real problem for any tactics that the Navy had come up with. So I thought that was a little bit odd to try and make that move so soon. But I guess, desperate times call for desperate measures.
I agree, Andy, because I've not seen this film before. I didn't know how it finished, so I wondered, when this happening, I was thinking, I wonder if he's going to be put into something like seat 13 and one of the pirates sits in seat 15 and he accidentally gets sniped or something. That's what I was thinking in my head, But Muse does hold a gun to Captain Phillips, and he then does some shots to the helicopter, and the Navy SEALs mission leader starts reading out the names of the pirates, which seems to get them a bit flustered and a bit concerned, because obviously now the Americans know who the pirates are.
Yeah, they know who they're dealing with, and the pirates know that they know who they're dealing with. The SEALs give the pirates and Captain Phillips a bag, and they tell Captain Phillips to wear the top for his safety. And they also make a point to tell him to stay in the same seat. So seat 15 is playing into their thinking.
Indeed, and Musa goes with the Americans to see their tribe leaders, because the Navy SEAL leader says, we're liaising with, we're negotiating with your tribe leaders. So he goes with them. So that means there are only 3 Somali pirates now with Captain Phillips on their lifeboat. Now, the Americans are deliberately making the lifeboat rock as well. So they're using the same tactics that Captain Phillips did earlier in the film. And you can see that they're trying to get clean shots on the pirates. And during these scenes, we occasionally hear like 1 green, 2 red, or 2 green, 1 red, which obviously means whether they've got a clean shot on the pirates or not.
Yeah, these are some good scenes. But again, we have what I think is a bit of a reckless move by Phillips. He basically starts a fight with them, doesn't he? And then they tie him up and they give him another beating. But again, it means he's out of his seat. He's potentially interfering with Navy tactics. So again, I thought it was a bit reckless by him. But I guess the desperation of the situation might have led him down this thinking. But then we get to the meat of the matter, and the Americans stop the tow of the lifeboat, and the Navy SEAL snipers take down the 3 pirates with clean shots. So I guess it's 3 green at this point and 0 red. And Captain Phillips is in a state of shock. He's blindfolded at this point, isn't he? So he can't actually see what's going on. But he's covered in blood splatter. He's screaming in shock. He has no idea what's happening.
Yeah, and Andy, I didn't write this down, and I've just checked my quiz. Yep. Did you know that the Navy SEALs, the leader was an actor, but all the other Navy SEALs were actually real Navy SEALs?
I did not know that. There you go.
I just checked my questions about that just in case. I remember reading it, and then I thought, maybe I'll put that on the quiz, but I didn't, so I can share that tidbit of information.
Every day is a school day.
Yep. They rescue Captain Phillips from the lifeboat and arrest Muse. Now, they bring Captain Phillips to the destroyer, and we have this brilliant song playing in the background, and it's called Safe Now. And I know I've mentioned this a few times during season 2, and it's another song that I've got on my cinematic playlist. I really like this song, Safe Now. And I don't know if you say it's variations of it, but throughout the film, you have these little samples. And this is the one that I think is probably the best one on the soundtrack.
So it's good to know. I don't pay probably as close attention to the music as you do, so I probably need to educate myself a little bit on that. But one thing I do like is a good quote. And at this point, one of the Navy officers, I think it is, not one of the SEALs, basically, he says to Muse, "Captain Phillips is free, all your friends are dead."
Very matter of fact there. And we're not doing best quotes, are we, in season 2, Andy? So maybe that is one that you would have picked out to be your favourite quotes from the film.
That, or I'm the captain now, because that's the one I remember.
And Captain Phillips is injured, and he is suffering from shock as well when he's being examined by the Navy person, medic, I guess.
Yeah, it's quite an emotional scene, isn't he? He's struggling to keep it together, and he's clearly in a lot of pain, and he's in, emotional trauma has been suffered. And the film comes to an end, and we get an epilogue stating, as you mentioned earlier, that Muse was sentenced to 33 years in prison. and Captain Phillips went back to sea. I think it was, I can't remember the exact dates, but it was something like 15 or 16 months later, after this ordeal, that he went back to sea. But 33 years in prison for Musée. I think, being a pirate, they should have made him walk the plank.
Indeed. And I think, as part of the research, Andy, I didn't write this down, but I think he ended up working for another something like 4 years, Captain Phillips did, before retiring. So it didn't put him off.
There you go. Once a seaman, always a seaman, I guess.
The rain room.
So, Andy, I usually go first when I talk about the wife verdict. What about, do you want to go first this time? Did your wife partake in watching Captain Phillips and the Seaman, or did she give it a miss?
She gave it a miss. It was too late at night, and she thought the film was too long. Even though we'll discuss runtime if we haven't already. I don't think it was that long, but yeah, didn't line up with our plans. What about your wife? Did she partake this time?
She did, but she did nod off. She did that whole thing again, which I mentioned countless times about getting ready to hibernate. But she had to pop out of the house as well. I can't remember why. I don't know if she had to pick one of the kids up. So she did see the ending because she was Googling it as well. But the one thing she said, and I think she might have said this in the previous episode, Andy, she said that she likes that Tom Hanks chooses a range of diverse characters to play. However, she said something and I thought, you nailed it there, because I noticed that. She said during Captain Phillips, the bits that she watched, she said there were times that if she closed her eyes, it sounded like Woody or Forrest Gump, the way that he were talking or he expressed himself. And I thought, you know what, I think I noticed that as well.
It's just such a memorable voice, I guess. And unless it calls for a thick accent, he's going to sound like Tom Hanks, isn't he?
He is, and he I agree, and I think we said this off air before. I don't think we said it online during the pod. With James Bond, each film's kind of like an action film. I know the earlier ones were more spy before they became more action. So one of the things we're enjoying is in season 2, we're having a range of different genres and different type of films that we're seeing Hanks in. So we are enjoying that every film is very different or slightly different. So it's been an enjoyable experience so far during these 7 episodes.
Yeah, it's less formulaic than the Bond films, which you kind of know what to expect because it's roughly the same format each time. And speaking of which, we like to do this podcast in roughly the same format each time, which means the next thing on our list is the all-important ratings. Can't have the rating room without ratings. So Jay, why don't you kick us off? What did you give this out of 10?
I gave this a very solid 7 out of 10, and I will obviously talk about where that landed in the ratings later on. What about you, Andy?
Yeah, same. 7 out of 10. Nice, solid effort. Good film.
So another thing we're doing in season 2 is we're pulling out the rankings from IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. So I'm going to go first. IMDb, as of the day that we pulled the notes together, the ranking for Captain Phillips was 7.8 out of 10. So fairly consistent with our score in the rating room.
Indeed. A little bit more generous from Rotten Tomatoes. 93% on the tomatometer, certified fresh, with an 89% audience score. So a very respectable rating from Rotten Tomatoes.
It is, yeah. The highest out of the 4 main ratings out there. Now, this next segment, so this is where we pretend to be on the casting couch. So our regular listeners should be familiar with this, but I'm just going to recap. So this is where we recast the Tom Hanks role with another famous Tom. So during season 2, we have the chance to cast either
Tom Holland, Tom Hiddleston, Tom Cruise, or Tom Hardy. So Jay, who is your pick this week and why?
This week, Andy, I thought was a really hard one because my initial instinct tells me Tom Hiddleston, but I'm also drawn to Tom Cruise. But I did struggle with this, so I did go with my gut in the end, and I picked Tom Hiddleston. For me, I just can't see Cruise necessarily playing a a believable Captain Phillips being taken hostage. I think when you think about Tom Cruise, he's always apart from Collateral, and I'm sure there must be some other films out there, he's always the main hero, or the one that's the strong character, and I can't see him being taken hostage. I mean, another film that jumps out actually where he was taken hostage in a fashion was The Last Samurai, and that is I think is a brilliant film. I really like that film. The wife hates it. Another film with a great soundtrack. So I couldn't see it in this instance. I couldn't imagine Tom Cruise being in the lifeboat, where I think if Tom Cruise was in the lifeboat, I just think of Ethan Hunt from Mission Impossible or Pete Maverick. He would fight his way out there. Where Tom Hanks failed as Captain Phillips to break out and swim away, I think Tom Cruise would be more believable and actually do that. So that's why I've gone for Tom Hiddleston. I think Tom Holland would probably be too young to play the role. Tom Hardy, I think he's a brilliant actor, and I think he could probably play most roles, but I think Tom Hardy I've featured more than once already. So yes, Tom Hiddleston. What about you, Andy? Did you have a difficult one this week?
Yeah, this is a tricky one, I thought, but I've gone with Tom Cruise. I just don't buy Hiddleston or Holland as a ship captain for some reason, and nobody's overpowering Tom Hardy. He's a big beefy guy. He would make short work of the pirates. But I would say Cruise would have to show some weakness and vulnerability to pull this off. So you can't take the Ethan Hunt, Pete Maverick type role. He's got to show a little bit more, and I think he's got that in his locker. That kind of weakness and vulnerability. So Tom Cruise is my pick.
Do you think Tom Cruise will ever win an Oscar for Best Actor?
No. He's not that good. There, said it. Hot. That's my hot take for the week. He's all right, decent, but he's not Oscar material.
Okay, you probably ruin any chance of him coming onto the podcast now, Andy. So I just did a quick Google because I'm sure when The Last Samurai came out, there was publicity around there to say this was the time that Tom Cruise was going to get the Oscar gong. But I don't believe he was even nominated. So he's been nominated for Best Actor for Born on the 4th of July, Jerry Maguire, and Best Supporting Actor for Magnolia. And then Best Picture was for Top Gun Maverick. So I wonder, will he ever get it? Or is he not? He's obviously not past it, Andy, but maybe he's kind of past it in terms of his peak of his powers.
Yeah, maybe.
Mission Impossible. Yeah. We go off topic, don't we?
I don't think he's quite at that level. But if he does win in future, congratulations, and I've started my first celebrity feud on the Rating Room.
He might say something in his speech when he wins and says, "Bleep that, Andy from the Rating Room podcast. I've done it."
There's no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah,
sure.
True.
Go on, Tom Hanks. Not Tom Hanks. Go on, Tom Cruise. I dare you. Make my day.
So this next segment is the segment we are calling the 6 degrees of James Bond. Now, this is based on the concept that we are all connected to one another by only 6 degrees of separation.
So as we've discussed previously, Season 1 of the Rating Room, we rewatched and discussed all the official James Bond films. So in Season 2, we're going to explore how Tom Hanks is linked to the various different actors in the James Bond franchise.
Now, we've explored the Tom Hanks connection with all the actors who have played James Bond. So therefore, today we're going to mix it up a bit, and we've looked at the actors that were top ranked in the Bond villains, and how they are related to Tom Hanks. So Andy, do you want to go first and just remind us who was your favourite villain in Season 1?
Indeed, my favourite villain from Season 1 of the Rating Room was played by Javier Bardem, and it was the Bond villain Raul Silva from the film Skyfall. So let's get into this. Step 1, Javier Bardem was in Automata with Dylan McDermott. Dylan McDermott was in The Neon Empire with Gary Busey.
Yeah, Gary Busey was in Saturday Night Live 15th anniversary with Tom Hanks. So this means this week's 6 degrees of James Bond is completed in 3 degrees for Andy's favourite Bond villain. Now, next up is my one, and just to recap our listeners, I picked the infamous Goldfinger, played by Gert Frobe, as my favourite Bond villain. So Andy, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so Gert Frobe was in The Girl from Flanders with Maximilian Schell.
Yeah, Schell was in together with Jacqueline Bisset.
Jacqueline Bisset was in The Mephisto Waltz with Kurt Lowens.
Now, Kurt Lowens was in Angels and Demons with Tom Hanks. I wonder if we're going to watch that film, Andy, in season 2.
To be determined. Keep listening. But that does mean that for your favourite villain, we have completed 6 degrees of James Bond in 4 degrees. So we're doing well with this segment. We've not disproven the theory as yet. But it's now time for our main feature, I would say, on the rating room, and that is the rank bank. So we're going to run through the usual topics that we go through. Jay, as always, why don't you kick us off with some run times?
Yeah, so the run times. Captain Phillips was on for 2 hours, 14 minutes. Now, that means it goes in 3rd place so far in season 2, and that is just short of Forrest Gump and just slightly longer than Philadelphia. So just a quick recap, The Green Mile, 3 hours, 9 minutes is out there. Way ahead at number 1, Forrest Gump, 2 hours, 22 minutes, and then Captain Phillips in 3rd place with 2 hours, 14 minutes. Andy, do you want to talk through the box office?
Yeah, so the budget for this film was $55 million, which is the joint 3rd highest budget that we've had of any film so far. The actual worldwide box office was around $221 million, which, looking down the list, kind of puts it mid-table. 4th out of 7, I believe, in that rankings. But we do the order by adjusted box office to try and keep it as fair as we can. And in the adjusted box office rankings, this actually is 7th out of 7 so far, with just over 287 million. So it's slightly behind Road to Perdition in 6th place, which has an adjusted box office of 309 million. But still a respectable profit margin nonetheless.
Yeah, we've had no flops yet, have we, in terms of box office? And I think, before we started recording any of these episodes, Andy, and if you said to me which film would have had the lowest adjusted box office out of the 7, I would have probably said this one. Even though I hadn't seen it, I would have put this one in last place at week 7, I think. So, moving on, our next one is where we rank the different actors that where we rank the different characters that Tom Hanks plays. Obviously, the film is titled Captain Phillips, and Tom Hanks plays Captain Richard Phillips. For me, this was an easy one. I do think this is I won't jump into the films bit, but it's definitely one of the weaker characters. I think he is good, but when you compare him with the other roles that we've had in season 2 so far, people like, Paul Edgecombe in The Green Mile, Josh in Big, Woody in Toy Story, Andrew Beckett, Forrest Gump. Now, for me, it was between Michael Sullivan and Captain Richard Phillips, but I think Michael Sullivan, for me, was a stronger character and a more enjoyable film. So I put Captain Phillips bottom in 7th place. What about you, Andy?
So I've also gone for 7th out of 7. I think Tom Hanks played the role well, but there's not a lot of depth to this character. It's not a larger-than-life character like the others that you mentioned are. So there's just a little bit less interesting for me, because it's just a normal everyday guy. It's not a larger-than-life superhero or villain or anything of that nature. So whilst a good performance by Hanks, the actual character of Captain Richard Phillips is not really on a par with the others. So 7th out of 7 so far. So moving on to supporting actors, we pick what we think is the main supporting actor from each film and we rank them against each other. In this case, the main supporting actor was Barkhad Abdi, playing the role of Abdulali Mousse. Again, for me, not necessarily a captivating character. Whilst the performance again was good and the film was enjoyable, I'm not going to deny that, the actual character was not as interesting, didn't have a lot of depth to it. So I've gone for 7th out of 7 as well for this. I guess part of it is down to the fact that it's a true story. So you can't necessarily embellish it too much, but there was a lack of depth. Like, what's the motivation? What's the backstory? There's none of that really given here, and I understand reasonings why, but as a film production, that just means it's lacking in terms of character development, I guess. So that's my reasoning for 7th out of 7, but a fine performance nonetheless. What about you, Jay? Where do you rank Barkhad Abdi as Musei?
Yeah, I thought it was definitely one of the weaker actors / characters in season 2 that we've had so far. However, I've put him in one spot higher. So I've knocked Elizabeth Perkins to 7th, and I've put Abdi, who played Musei, in 6th place. And for me, the only thing that swung it was he won a BAFTA. So I thought he was a very good pirate, but that is just what swung it for me. But yes, definitely one of the weaker ones that we've seen so far. No Paul Newman or, John Coffey in The Green Mile. Or even, when you start thinking about Buzz Lightyear, Joe Miller, Jenny, it is noticeable. But there's a noticeable theme going on here, isn't there, Andy, where Captain Phillips is ranking lower throughout these categories in the rating room.
That certainly seems to be the case. Is that going to continue, though, with our final ranking?
Well, so the final ranking for me is, I've obviously mentioned Captain Phillips with 7 out of 10, and as we've stated countless times, we are not having any joint places in the film rankings. So Captain Phillips, I've slotted in 7th place, bottom of the table. So it does share 7 out of 10 with Green Mile and Road to Perdition, but for me, it is definitely the weakest film that we've watched so far. What about you, Andy? Do you want to just recap what you gave Captain Phillips, and where does it go into your top 7?
Yes, like you, I also gave this a 7 out of 10. However, I did enjoy this considerably more than Road to Perdition, which I only gave a 5 out of 10. So for that reason, it goes in at 6th place. I think a solid film, good film, but not quite enough to pip Toy Story and Big as the other 7 out of 10. So it goes into 6th place out of 7 so far. And that brings us to the end of another week of the Rating Room. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
We do love hearing from our listeners, and we encourage you to email us with any feedback, questions, or even suggestions that you may have. And your input does help us make better content, and it makes the show more engaging for everyone.
Don't hesitate to reach out to us at theratingroom@gmail.com. We'll do our best to respond to every email that we receive.
You can also contact us via our website, and you can find all the show notes for all the episodes from Season 1 and Season 2 on our website at www.theratingroom.com. And also make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Rating Room.
You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, maybe even Threads by the time this goes out, by following us at The Rating Room. Send us a message, leave us a comment, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And be sure to follow us to stay up to date with all the latest episodes and news. So, where do we go from here? I think there's only one place to go after a film such as this, and that is to a far, far away remote island with only a beach ball for company. Because next week, we're going to be talking about the film Castaway. Thanks for listening, everyone.